Hi, everyone. I'm Carey Pena, and thank you so much for being here with us. We are live in our Inspired Media 360 studios. I wanted to dedicate the next hour to doing this live show because I have received an overwhelming amount of email and social media questions, in particular about how small businesses are supposed to navigate the next few months. So I dedicated the last week or so to conducting a bunch of interviews that I really think will be helpful. We talked to Glenn Hammer from the Chamber of Commerce. We talked to an expert from Eide Baley about the PPP loans. If you still have not had any luck receiving money from the government, we want to bring you that interview. And he also talks about something that I think we all need to focus on if we have received those loans, and that is what will it mean on down the road when you have to think about paying them back? Can you get the loans forgiven? So we have a lot of interviews to bring you today, and I also will have a live guest, a restaurant owner from one of my favorite restaurants, who's going to tell us about how he is planning to reopen. He's had a really great marketing strategy, so I wanted to bring him live in studio, and he's sitting right now in our lobby, and he kindly brought us some food, so I'm excited about that. But first up right now, I want to bring you this interview that I conducted with Glenn Hammer. He is from the Chamber of Commerce, and we talked in particular about how states will reopen, what will be the steps, and any concerns that he might have that he wanted to share with all of you. Here it is.
The situation for small business is dire. I mean, we've probably nationwide seen at least a quarter of small businesses temporarily closed. That's an astonishing number,
Yeah.
and it's tragic. These are great people who have put their life savings into building something that we all enjoy experiencing. Right now, the best game in town for small businesses is something called the Federal Paycheck Protection Program. Mm-hmm. We're fortunate that this exists. It's not enough, but it's something. And basically that platform has already been used by well over 19,000 Arizona small businesses, representing probably easily hundreds of thousands of workers. And what that basically is it's a 2-month forgivable loan for payroll, rent, and utilities. And the whole thinking there is that this pandemic is temporary. Let's keep these businesses going for at least the next couple of months through 8 weeks, and let's try to keep the employees connected to the employers. So when there is the restart, they can reopen with a lot more pop than if people are completely disconnected. But
as you well know, there's a lot of frustration from people who have applied for the PPP, who have heard nothing, or say that they're like way back in the back of the line, are trying to navigate and wonder, how long can I hold on?
No, all I can say is my heart goes out to them, and to do the best they can to continue to work with their lenders or whatever lending institution that they're working with for the PPP loans. It's just to give a sense of perspective. The Small Business Administration has given out more loans in the last 14 days than it had in the past 14 years.
Wow.
So it's just an incredible number. But the good news, in my opinion, is that you had round 2 pass. So the first round of $349 billion was exhausted very quickly.
Yeah.
Congress came back in a bipartisan way and put in about another $310 billion. And I also want to just say that both of our United States senators, Senators Sinema and McSally, have been very strong supporters of that program.
Yeah.
And in fact, Senator Sinema has already indicated to Senate leadership that we probably will have to go for round 3.
You made another great point in this op-ed, if I may just read a line from here, because this really caught my attention. I think this is going to be a huge point that people are going to have to try to navigate. You say if employers are hesitant to reopen out of fear of inviting a potential lawsuit, then Arizona's economic recovery will be delayed. So that is a great point.
No, thank you. We feel very strongly that there needs to be safe harbors.
But what can that be?
Yeah.
You know, if I'm a business owner and you guys are telling me, all right, on this timeline, you can open, but put some precautions in place. I mean, still, there's a lot of gray area there. And if I'm worried that if someone says, I caught COVID in your place,
right,
I'm going to sue you, right, that's dangerous.
Well, it's dangerous, and it will mean that our economic recovery will be terribly delayed. So what we're saying is this isn't a get out of jail free. You know, for employers that are acting with gross negligence, they would be liable, and they should be liable. But for those who are following CDC and health guidelines, such as, and it could be masks, or it could be they have hand sanitizer or plexiglass or temperature checks, where they're doing everything they possibly can, and it's in accordance with CDC guidelines. That should be a safe harbor, and they should not be taken to court and put out of business.
Will there be any assurances, though? I mean, you're saying, and I appreciate your language because you're navigating this too, but you say they shouldn't be taken to court, but I mean, will there be any protections put in place? Can there be? I don't know.
Absolutely, and we're looking to see protections placed on the state and the federal level. Like, I'll give an example. The governor did this by executive order for Good Samaritans acting to help people that may have COVID. They have some degree of liability protection because of the governor's action. We're saying that that type of protection is going to need to be expanded across the board, whether it's for retailers or hotels or you name it. Again, so long as they're using best practices to keep customers and workers safe, they shouldn't be hauled into court. And again, I can't emphasize enough, global pandemic, no cure, and no vaccine. There's just going to be a level of risk that exists until we have better treatments and ultimately.
And our thanks to Glenn Hammer for spending some time here with us. We were filming that interview as a podcast. My podcast is Carey Pena Reports. And we were shooting behind the scenes footage as well to share with all of you here today. Now I want to talk about the PPP loans. So we know that there was the first round that went very quickly, and then the second round that also has gone by extremely quickly, especially for a lot of small mom and pops who say, what about us? I really wanted to get someone in here who had high level expertise, because one of the things I've been hearing is if you have a fancy lawyer or accountant and you can afford to pay those people, then you can get fast tracked to the beginning of these lines. But what about everyone else? And I put up a post on my personal or on my public Facebook page, Carey Pena, and the comments I was reading were just absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. So I invited Josh Hayes, who is a high net worth accountant from Eide Baley. He's a very busy person, especially right now, as you might imagine. He came in here and he spent some time with us. I wanted to play most of his interview. It's about 17 minutes, because his answers are really specific and they answer a lot of the questions that I've been hearing from all of you. So here now is Josh Hayes from Eide Baley. If you have applied and have not heard back from anyone, what can you do?
Well, it's a tough one, right? I hear that from a host of clients day in and day out, right? If you peel back from the weeds for a second, right, this is a bank loan, right? This is a bank loan that is being picked up. The tab is picked up by the government via their SBA program, right? So there's this natural divergence between getting the money out quick, right, and trying to prevent fraud in terms of who's actually applying for these loans. So the SBA and the government continue to put guidelines on top of these banks, which has slowed the process way down, right? They're worried about being left on the hook. So you have to just think from the bank's perspective, they have to be a little careful here, right? So that's what's clogging the system up. What I tell clients, what I tell customers and people I hear about and read about is go to many banks, right? Continue to call your banker, use the relationship you have with your business banker, and keep pressing, right? Go to multiple banks. Large banks have slowed down, right? They're doing thousands and thousands of applications. You've put one in the system, you haven't heard. I would absolutely recommend you go to a second bank, a small bank, maybe a local community bank, maybe a credit union, and you file a concurrent application and see if you can't press through there. In fact, in the second round of funding, right, the funding that just started Monday, the guidelines came out with a specific provision that are allowing small banks some favoritism in getting those loans through. In fact, yesterday they had a special 8-hour window where only small banks' applications could be considered by the SBA. So it looks like they're doing the right thing here. I have to tell you, press on, don't give up, and if you have to, use your relationships with your bank, with your lender.
Because I have been hearing from the folks who have written to me and on our various platforms, they've said that they've heard nothing or have had no luck with the big banks, but have had some luck with the smaller banks. So that sort of, that stands true based on what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, these small banks, you know, they're trying to give these loans out, right? They have money that they need to lend, right? Remember, The ability to lend comes from the bank's finances, right? Just the government is going to back those loans. So you have to have bank assets, and these small community banks have assets that they're trying to lend. They don't have a huge customer base, and they're active in the lending market. So I encourage people to go to a community bank, have a conversation with them. They have been very, very helpful in getting people through the system so far that have been stopped up at some of the larger banks.
Are there any small banks that you would recommend or that you have seen personally doing a great job?
Yeah, Sunflower Bank is a bank that I've been in contact with. I've referred a few people to Sunflower Bank, and so far the feedback has been fabulous. They've been able to get people through the system orderly and in an expedient fashion. So.
Let's talk about, and you just mentioned the second round of funding. So there was obviously a lot of frustration that the first round of funding was released and was gobbled up by a lot of big entities. What happened there?
Yeah, so if we go way back here for a second, and by way back I mean 45 days ago, right? So
which seems like an eternity.
Absolutely an eternity. At least in my house, it's an eternity, right? So $350 billion comes on the scene. This is crisis level funding. The analogy that I have heard over and over again is, we're learning how to fly the plane while it's flying, right? So they have to get money to the masses as quick as they can, to small businesses. And what happens when they write these bills is they write them very broad, and then people behind the scenes, the wonks and the geeks like myself, start to say, what about this, what about that, right? So they're trying to give us rules as we're going. What they failed to do, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is give any sort of quantitative tests for who qualifies and who doesn't. Because they didn't do that, everybody showed up that met the very the minimal guidelines. They showed up to get their share of the PPP loan, right? And what happened then is the large banks with long lists of business clients, it was a horse race, right? It was a gold rush, and people were showing up. They have accountants, they have lawyers that are helping them do this, and they're big customers of the banks, and they show up and they're front in line. Then, of course, the SBA made a switch, right? The SBA said, hang on a second, in order to prevent fraud, banks, we want you to only treat your customers first, because there's some layer of due diligence behind the scenes. So treat only your customers first, right? And then you can start treating people or accepting applications for people who don't have a relationship with you. So, for example, if I had no banking relationship, I don't have a business, right? I have no business loans. I don't have a relationship with the bank. They have to put me at the end of the line.
Yeah.
And that came right down from the government. So as soon as they cleaned out their queue of customers, then they could go on to the new customers, right?
But all that first round of funding then got gobbled up, and we've seen a lot of the bigger entities, including the LA Lakers, who came under incredible scrutiny because they took, I could see different, views on this, but I could also really see from the small mom and pop perspective that the rich just keep getting richer. If you can hire fancy accountants and lawyers to get you to the front of the line, you get the money.
Yeah, that's the question of the day, right? It's a very famous question. It's become famous, infamous to some people. That's on the loan application. It's a certification question, and this is a great example of getting guidance while we're trying to figure out the function of this program, right? The certification question was very easy on its face. It says, does the uncertainty make it necessary that you need a loan? Yes or no? Well, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? If you talk about Shake Shack, right, or Ruth's Chris, or the people who have been abused in the media, they said, we absolutely have certainty. We're shutting down, right? We're going to lay people off. This loan is intended for us. They don't want us to lay people off, so we qualify. And they did. Statutorily, they qualified.
And then Shake Shack gave it back, right?
And Ruth's Chris is giving it back, right? And so what's happening is this question of certification has come to the forefront. What does necessary mean, right? And I don't know what necessary means, and most of the business world doesn't. And so again, we're in this situation where the government is now lobbing out, well, we think this is what necessary means. And there's a bunch of people, Shake Shack, for example, who said, wait a second, that's nowhere in the statute. And so again, I think the SBA was embarrassed that some of those big companies that have what they call access to other capital, and they're putting a little bit of public pressure on them to give it back, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying indirectly, hey, this was meant for small businesses
that
who
will have to
really are
shut
going
their
to shut
doors.
down, who are going to shut down if they don't have this money, not businesses that can run to the capital market, especially public companies, and raise capital.
So from a practical standpoint, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but if I'm sitting here, I mean, I could think of like 50 names off the top of my head of small business owners. Desert Rock Winery is one good example. Paul Hoffman, he's worked so hard to build that winery, makes incredible wines right here in the Valley, has done such a good job. I mean, he is at the breaking point. He wrote to me a few different times saying, I've put in all these applications, I've heard nothing. Now the second round of funding is running out, time is running out. What should he do?
Well, it's, same question. He's got to keep doggedly going after that money, right? So Monday, the second round of funding really was starting to be considered. Yesterday, they closed off the big banks for a period of time, small banks only. And now they've opened it back up today, back to the general masses of banks, right? So if he's in a situation where this is his lifeline, right, he has to spend his days on the phone with the banker. And again, I would reach out to 3 or 4 other banks. I am hearing stories of small banks that are saying, please come to us. We have cash to lend. We can get these loans into the system, so please come to us. In fact, the second round was specifically designed to say, small banks, we're going to give you preference.
So there's no penalty, because I'm a rule follower, so I'd be nervous if I already put an application at B of A or Wells Fargo or Chase.
Yeah. No rule.
I can go around and keep putting in different applications.
Yes.
And then if I get a yes on one, then I can make the decision, right?
You can make the decision. Then you turn the other ones down. You withdraw your applications on the other.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When you get the money, what steps do you need to take to make sure that your loan is forgiven? Because it's not free money.
Yeah, well, it certainly seems like it might be free money if you read the Wall Street Journal too often, right? So again, I want to just go back and get everybody to the starting point of the forgiveness, right? There are 2 specific calculations that have to go on, right? The first one is, how do we calculate the loan, right? That question has been answered for most people, right? We got some guidance, we started to make these computations, and we think we're pretty good on here's how you calculate the loan, right? Effectively, it's payroll plus a few other operating costs.
How many
right?
people
Rent,
you employ.
Yeah, how many people you employ, payroll costs. The trouble on the loan side is it's for 10 weeks, 2.5 months, right? So now we have our loan, it's funded, and it's good. And immediately my business clients started calling me saying, I have to worry about how to get this forgiven, right? That's the benefit of the loan, is the forgiven piece.
Right.
And I'm realizing now as I run my math, I may not get it all forgiven, right? And we don't know if that was the intent of Congress, was to make it not completely forgivable. But certainly if you run the math today, as we see it, there's a strong likelihood that you won't have the entirety forgiven. What we're telling people to do is this: be careful with this. Leave the money in a separate account, right? So you get your funding. They're going to create an account that just has the funding dollars sitting in it. Leave it there, right? Leave it there so you can see it. The bank can see it. And we're treating it as an impress type account. So I make a rent payment, I submit a reimbursement from myself with an invoice and say, please reimburse me from my rent during this 8-week period, right? And so slowly that account will run down as we're drawing it down,
Yeah.
right? And then at the end of this 8-week period, we at least know how much we think is forgivable and how much is left that may have to go to the bank, right? And that's the question there. Every time they answer a question for us on the forgiveness piece, they raise 1,000 more.
Yes.
And we are running blind here in terms of the forgiven piece. So we're hoping for guidance in the next few days.
Yeah.
I think it has to come out sooner than later. There are people making real operating decisions. Should I bring people back? Am I paying them for 32 hours or 40 hours? What do I do with people who are getting bonuses in the past year? They don't know how to operate when they're worried about this forgiven piece.
Yeah.
Right?
And for a business owner that's worried about being able to stay open and also worried about the people who they are responsible for. It is such a stressful situation on so many levels. I want to ask you a question that sort of dovetails off of what you were just talking about, and this is in the news as we sit here today. Small businesses that borrow money through the government's aid program could face audits before the loans are forgiven. That is according to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that's back to the famous question, right? The necessary piece, right? So again, as they started to understand who was applying for the loans and the size of the loans, right? The government, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said, wait a second, when you said necessary, you better have meant necessary. And we don't know what necessary means, but you better have meant it, right?
Yeah.
That's the trouble with it. So they drew an artificial line in the sand, and they said $2 million plus of loan, you're getting audited. Yet to be determined if they can actually do it. There's some time tables that have to take place. From the end of the 8th week, they have 60 days to approve forgiveness of the loan.
Yeah.
I don't know how many full audits they can do with their staffing, because there's millions of them within 60 days,
Yeah.
right? But they have said, we're going to audit you over 2 million. Under 2 million, it will be spot audits. It's going to be interesting. We don't know who's doing the audits even.
Well, that goes back to your advice. Put in a separate account.
That's right.
And make everything as transparent as possible so that you don't have anything to worry about, because if you end up getting, and hopefully people will get the money they need to survive, but make sure that you are cautious.
That's right.
With how that money is spent.
Yeah, cash is fungible, right? That's the interesting thing. Theoretically, you can take that cash when you're funded and do anything you want with it, and then just show up with payroll records and rent receipts and utility bills. We're hesitating away from that type of a scenario. We're saying, be careful, set it there. Here it is. I'm watching it slowly drain down as I'm asking myself for reimbursement, and whatever's left over is left over. Here's my receipts. Here's the payments of that cash for these checks. Here you go, audit away.
I want to ask you a few questions that have come into our Facebook platform. From Trisha Arce, she says, I own Toasted Mallow in Gilbert. We applied the day the first round came about for the SBA loans and then applied for the PPP. We spent 2 weeks filling out all of the required forms. We furloughed half of our staff and are still open for online and curbside. She said, we were so disheartened to hear that Arizona was last in receiving any funding. We've been in business for 6 years, making handcrafted marshmallows in multiple flavors and giving customers an experience by making gourmet s'mores right in front of them, which sounds awesome. Yeah. And she says that just in the month of March, we are down $20,000. I'm determined to make it through this because I have faith that even though I'm a small business, I have a bigger desire to succeed. What do you say to her?
She was the absolute textbook business for who they intended to help, right? They didn't write the bill very well, so we really weren't sure who was getting help, but that's who they were talking about, they being Congress, when they decided to help, right? Keep your people employed. We will help you. Don't send them to the unemployment line. Keep them there. Keep your business as is, even with a reduced level of customers. Keep them coming in. Keep your business ready to just start back up as soon as we're allowed to go out and go back to restaurants and other establishments. Keep going. She's got to keep going. Go to the banks. Go to the small community banks. Get her lender on the phone. Keep pushing. I would be surprised, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would be surprised if we don't even get to a third round of funding when the Congress starts to hear stories like this. Right?
How long does she have this window for this second round that's currently taking place?
Well, it opened Monday. It's $310 billion. I have heard stories of it running out this week, right? Because what you had happen was you had a bunch of applications and they ran out of the first tranche. Well, some banks just kept the remaining applications behind it and just kept them in the queue. Some banks actually said, no, you have to start the process over. And every bank gets to make their own decision, right? That's been the issue here. So I don't know when it runs out, I would be worried that it would be still there by through this week. I would say today or tomorrow is last gasp.
I want to ask you a few more questions here. The owners of Southwick's Linens in Gilbert say last week we called the SBA since we still had heard nothing on the EIDL, and they stated that they had no record of us even applying. I gave them the application number I received, and they said that there is no record for the number. The PPP place, after 2 weeks, sent a generic letter saying they were out of funds, so we immediately filled out a new application with Chase, our business bank for the last 13 years. We received a letter from them saying that they had 100,000 applicants ahead of us and that they were out of funds.
Yeah, get to the community banks. I think that's the best advice that they can that they can listen to, right? We don't know. Chase and Wells Fargo's of the world, they have not told us how many applications they have. That's the first actual numerical number that I've heard in terms of loans that are still in the queue. I would reach out to as many as they can. Credit unions, community banks, I think that could be helpful.
We have a real problem that is going to come about with these unemployment numbers spiking. I was listening to some reporting this morning. I haven't independently confirmed it, but with regard to Las Vegas, they're at a 25% unemployment rate.
That's right.
I mean, what do you see coming and also add to that, I heard Fed Chair Jerome Powell talking some pretty ominous things about what's going to happen to the economy.
Well, I'm not an economist, right? I'm a tax geek.
Yeah, you're a numbers guy, and
you
watch this stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yet to be determined. I have to believe that this unemployment is very temporary, right? It's not the same as we're compensating you for a long time, right? I believe that when the governors start relaxing these restrictions and the people feel confident that they can go back out for dinners or they can go back out to the movie, that those numbers will come off of unemployment and come back in to our economy, right? Especially as consumer type of economy that we have, right? There will be some businesses that just can't survive, and those people, and again, in my opinion, should have pretty good access to jobs. If you recall, before this started, we were staffing shortage. It was everything I heard.
Yeah.
My clients were saying, I would love to produce more. I can't, I don't have people.
Economic boom.
Economic boom and nowhere near enough employees. So again, it seems to me like the companies that come out of this are going to have a whole new access of employees, because I don't think we need 25 million people unemployed. I don't know that it's a V-shaped recovery. I think it's pretty clear it's a U-shaped recovery, but specific to the unemployment side, I see companies that needed labor now having access to labor, and I think those jobs will come back.
And my thanks again to Josh Hayes for spending so much time with us. Honestly, guys, I don't normally run interview clips that long, but because there is so much gray area, and I've heard from so many people who are desperately seeking answers, I just thought it was important to run the entirety of what he had to say. Next up, I want to bring you a shorter interview, one that I conducted recently with Stephanie Hockridge and Nate Reis. You might recognize Stephanie Hockridge if you're from the Valley. She's a former anchor from ABC 15. They have founded this new technology called Blue Acorn, and they told me that their mission is to help underserved communities access some of the government money.
It's a really amazing platform that allows us to really reach out to the underserved small businesses in our community, the women-owned businesses, the rural-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and really the smallest of the small businesses, and allow them and give them a fighting chance in order to access this much-needed funding to do exactly what you say, support their employees, support their business, and make sure that that business that they built their dream on can exist after COVID.
So this is a piece of technology similar to like a TurboTax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So one of the biggest challenges with this current climate and situation was really, really unique. And as I said to Stephanie, so there's a few things going on in the world right now that require technology to solve. We have a quarantine, let's just call it a quarantine, right? Where people are stuck in their house. Then there is this huge gap between people in their house or running a small business, right, and the bank. And even the bankers, right, a lot of them are in their house or by appointment only. And so you have a whole bunch of money in the bank and you have a whole bunch of people at home, right? And we needed to find a way to bridge that gap. And the really key important thing though to understand is, okay, banks will say, well, we have a platform. Well, anybody that has tried to use a bank platform lately, they realize that they have something. But that one of the really important understandings is that people don't have computers. They use phones for everything. So we had to very, very quickly think about, and this is where I said I pulled some friends together, to think about that entire thing of how do we bridge the gap with a TurboTax simple platform that takes the guesswork out of filling out paperwork and then knowing where to route it to. And it all had to be able to be mobile and online, and then connect other people in the community that can help the business check out. So it was really a bring the community together to help each other, and while we can then go to work and trying to find the different lending institutions or places that can take the loans.
So just breaking this down to
Yeah.
granular terms, this is really a technology that sort of helps people navigate how to fill out the paperwork.
It is so confusing, Carey. I mean, because so many different types of businesses apply, and it's because of that there's no like simple like here's exactly what you need to do. Here are the exact pieces of financial documentation that you need in order to support your loan ask. So nobody knows what to do.
And then if you put in the wrong stuff, then your thing gets set to the side, and then you're way at the back of the line.
Yes, so we wanted to build technology that literally walks you through that process step by step by step, and our proprietary technology sends you on this little path that tells you exactly what you need to do. I am a sole proprietor. I do not have, obviously, any employees. I pay myself this much money. What do I need to do? Bam, it'll take you through the process, and it'll tell you exactly what documents to upload so that we can put that into one file and give it over to a lender that's SBA approved lender, and then they're able to process your application.
Thank you very much to Stephanie and Nate. And next up, I have one more interview to share with you, and then we'll bring in our live guest, who is a restaurant owner who's going to talk about how he is marketing his reopening strategy. And I've been told that he is just doing an excellent job with that. So we'll learn more in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce you to Court Rich. He is the co-founder of HealthyVerify.com. And essentially what they're focusing on is creating a checklist and a verification for businesses so that they can make sure that they open safely. What are the steps you need to take? We talked to Court via Zoom just a little while ago. I'm joined now by Court Rich, who's one of the founders of the Rose Law Group and of HealthVerify.com. Court, how you doing?
I'm good, Carey. Thanks for having me on.
I know you're busy. You guys have a lot going on over there. Tell us more about the HealthyVerify.com.
So what we've noticed is that when we're talking to business owners, their biggest issue is how do I, even if I open my doors, how are my employees or my customers going to be comfortable and confident coming back? And they ask, what can we do to try to differentiate ourselves, or to, to just send out this confidence vibe to the community that theirs is a place that is, is doing the right stuff to try to keep their customers healthy.
So what did you guys come up with here? It's like a certification process.
It is. So what we do is Healthy Verify Certification is a company that was formed. We have the infectious disease department at Barrows locally here is working with us to develop procedures for businesses. And we do it uniquely for each business, whether you're a hotel or a restaurant or a small office or whatever. We're working with all kinds of different businesses. We develop these procedures for your business. And then once you implement those procedures, we do an inspection. And if you pass that inspection, then we certify you. And then you can, then advertise to your customers and to your employees that you've gone through this process and you are certified.
So can you tell us a little bit, I know each business is different, but does this have to do with how you're sterilizing things, whether or not you're wearing masks? I mean, take us through some of the things that would allow you to become certified.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great. What we try to do is it's a comprehensive, an actual manual you end up with of procedures. That's everything from what do you do when your employees come in the morning, the questions that you ask them, temperature checks, what else you have to do to monitor your employees to make sure that they're healthy at work, where people should stand or not stand, the surfaces that need to be cleaned, what chemicals you can and can't use to clean those surfaces. Even things about airflow and depending on the unique attributes of your business, there's all sorts of different things that we get into.
Are businesses at risk of legal exposure if someone were to go in and then say, hey, I got COVID because I went into your business?
Well, there's certainly a lot of discussion around that right now, and some lawmakers that are talking about passing legislation to limit liability and those kind of things. I think the best thing, from Healthy Verify's perspective, what we do is we give the business the tools to try to minimize or reduce the risk that disease is going to be transferred or caught or whatever at your premises. And so by reducing that, at the very least, you reduce the chances that someone's going to get sick and look to sue you. I think the law will have to sort of be developed around liability going forward, though.
How much does it cost to get certified?
So it depends. It depends on the business. And what we do is we have an upfront cost for the procedures. And that'll be different for, if you're a restaurant with one location versus, we just certified Goodwill and they have almost 100 retail outlets around the state. That price will be different. And then there's a monthly price for maintaining the certification over a year's time. And then there's an opportunity to renew at the end of the year.
And Court, if we could just, as we close things out, can you just give your best piece of advice to business owners, as you well know, because you guys do a great job of outreach in the community to businesses of all sizes, but there's just a lot of fear and there's a lot of gray area and people are trying to navigate. What is your best piece of advice?
Yeah, I think, and it's part of the reason we formed Healthy Verify is, find someone who specializes in this, find somebody, an infectious disease doctor, someone who knows what they're doing and isn't just speculating, and then follow their advice. That's probably the best you can do. And then let your customers know the good stuff you're doing so that they can have added confidence.
Do you think it is safe for most of these businesses to open up here in the coming weeks?
Well, I don't think there's anything that anyone's ever going to do that's going to, eliminate the possibility of diseases being transmitted. But I think if you do all the right stuff, you're going to be able to reduce that risk significantly. And I think people will have to get comfortable with the idea that, we're going to go to places that look like they're doing the right kind of thing. And that's, hopefully that's your business if you're watching and you want people to come back.
Court, Rich, thank you so much. And once again, where people can find you.
You can go to healthyverify.com and check us out there, the phone number, and there's a comment box if you want to send us a direct email.
Awesome.
Thank you, Carey, so much.
Thank you. I know you have a bunch more Zoom calls to get on today, so thanks for jumping in here for a few minutes.
Thank you. Yes, nonstop Zoom.
Take care. Court, thank you so very much for spending a few minutes with us. And now I am joined live in studio. It's nice to have people back in the studio.
Isn't it?
And we're slowly easing off of some of the restrictions, still trying to take some precautions.
Yep.
But John Banquil is the owner of Ling Louies,
That's
which
right.
is a restaurant I love. And you have 2 locations here in the Valley and
Yes.
2 elsewhere, one at DFW.
One in the DFW airport and one in Boise, Idaho.
So we're going to talk about how you are reopening and sort of the steps you're taking. You also brought us some food,
I
which
did,
makes me
yeah.
so very happy. But before we do our interview, I just want to mention a few things really quickly. I've seen a lot of kind-heartedness happen throughout this crisis.
A
And
ton,
one of the
yeah.
things I wanted to do today was bring information to all of you. I know we all desperately need it, and the more clarity, the better. There was an angel investor who contacted me and said that they wanted to help one small business owner. And I'm not allowed to say who it is, but what I did, they wanted me to choose the small business. I didn't want to be responsible for, because there's too many great people and great businesses out there. So they have been tracking all of your posts. If you've been posting your story on my public page at Carey Pena, they've been tracking that, and I'm hopeful that I can bring you the results of that very soon. The other thing I wanted to mention, I got a note from Jay Fettlinger, and I'm sorry, Jay, if I mispronounced your last name, but he is with String Can, and they have made such a gracious outreach, and they have offered $30,000 over the next 60 days to restaurants in need of marketing help. So they chose several restaurants. I know I put them in touch with the owner of a small, wonderful restaurant, Pita & Co. So I just wanted to get a few of those points out there because we hear so much negative, but yet there is a lot of positive.
A ton of positive.
Tell me about your experience. So you guys have been closed down, and that's really tough for
It has
you.
been.
You're a busy restaurant.
Yes, and luckily we've kind of stayed busy with takeout and delivery. So just trying to adjust and pivot on the fly as every day something changes, new information comes out, and best practices and all that kind of stuff. So trying to move and be fluid through this whole situation has been a real challenge. But
I've been sad to see some restaurants have closed.
Yes.
What has been your fear level?
I would say at the beginning it was probably a 9 or 10. And then as we kind of navigated through it and we started seeing the amount of business that we were doing just in the first couple weeks of being open for just takeout and delivery, it calmed down to where it's maybe a 4, maybe,
The public has been supportive.
Very supportive, very supportive. And to your point about people giving and giving back to the community, we've had so many people that have bought gift cards. We donated half of our gift card sales back to our staff in an employee relief fund, so we had a ton of gift card sales. We had people buying gift cards and then donating back so we could use that to support other local charities. So we've been feeding Boys and Girls Club every week,
that's
every
wonderful.
Friday. We just did a big order for Child Crisis Arizona yesterday. So
I love both of those
yeah,
organizations.
so we're just trying to give back as much as we can, and I think it's showing in the support from the community.
Talk to me about your reopening strategy and what steps you're taking, because I know it's a difficult road for restaurants to
Yes.
navigate. Where do you seat people? How do you keep the servers safe?
Yep.
What are you doing?
We're doing a lot of things. So we have 3 main objectives. Okay, number 1 is to make sure our guests and our teammates stay safe. Number 2 is to rebuild trust with the community. And number 3 is to ensure a safe and fun dining experience and kind of build to this new normal of whatever that might be. So we've actually added some extra staff compared to what we would normally have this time of year. And we're gonna make sure that our servers are in PPE, so they have face masks, they have gloves, and there's gonna be specific people dedicated to just handling guests, dealing with guests, face-to-face with and handling their payments, and then we'll have others that are specifically there to run food and to run drinks. So people who are coming in close contact with the guests and handling cash and credit cards are never going to be handling food or beverage. We're also going to be making sure that we're socially distancing, keeping all the tables 6 feet apart. So we're down to maybe 45-50% of our dining capacity, and for the first probably month of us being open, maybe all the way to June 30th, depending on how things go, we're not going to have any seating at our bar. There's really no way functionally to have people sit at the bar.
People can't belly up to the bar and then try to
so
converse.
that's really going to be, we think takeout and delivery is going to continue to be a very strong piece of our business. So we're going to continue focusing on that, and our bar is going to play that role of basically a takeout counter for the time being.
If you could just quickly touch on, I heard from my friend Ashley, who I believe is your neighbor. She does my social media. She's amazing.
Yes.
I heard that your messaging was really on point. So just quickly for other businesses that might be watching and trying to figure out how do they message to their followers and their customers, what have you done?
I think messaging is, the most important part is just being open and honest, right? And we're going into this kind of uncharted territory of, a lot of people I think are going to be expecting perfection from restaurants and businesses, and all you can do is do your absolute best, right? And always be aware of what's going on and constantly training your team, constantly talking to your team, and constantly talking to your guests as they come in, whether it's through social media, however you can, just get the message out that we are trying, we're doing everything we can, and listing out everything that you're doing. We have it on our website on
Very
lingandlouies.com.
transparent.
Yes, just completely put it out there. This is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And hopefully people will be understanding and open and feel comfortable with all the steps that you're taking.
Do you have faith that things will get better and people will slowly start to return?
I do. I think there's already kind of this pent-up demand for people to come in, right?
People want to get out.
But our responsibility as business owners is to make sure that we do it safely,
Yes.
right? And it's our job to control how many people are coming in. So we're taking reservations, and we're highly recommending that all guests make reservations if
Yes.
you want to come dine with us, just to make sure that you get a seat. And just controlling that flow and making sure that we're looking out for not just the guests, but for our teammates as well.
Well, congratulations on
Thank
doing
you.
an amazing job and
you.
staying positive. I'm just such a big supporter of small business owners because I know within every business there's a dream. Someone sees an idea and has a dream and they want to make that come true. So
Absolutely.
I've just been thinking about that. really in a personal way everyone who writes to me. Before we close out the show, and thank you all so much for watching, I hope we were able to provide a lot of information and inspiration for you today. You brought in 3 of your most popular
And
dishes.
there's more in the lobby too.
Oh,
but,
wow.
so-
Okay, I'm excited.
Didn't want you guys to go
yes.
hungry.
So tell us what we have here.
So we have our pork fried rice. I think, not being biased, maybe a little biased, best fried rice in town. So we use char siu pork sliced on top, fresh vegetables, a secret sauce on there. We have our new wave pad thai, which is our most popular dish by far and away. And then a brand new dish to our menu. It's a crab and mango sushi roll.
Can you just hold that up a little bit? I don't want to step on your space, but just hold it up there a little bit to the camera. And then that looks so good. And I will say, too, that I usually try to eat gluten-free because my little daughter has to eat gluten-free. And you guys do a great job with your
And
gluten-free.
all of these are gluten-free.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And I'll be back making a reservation
Awesome.
just as soon as I can.
Looking forward
And
to it.
come down and have a little glass of wine and hang out. So thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
And before we sign off, I do want to give one quick shout out to my friend who has been going through a tough time trying to navigate this, Paul Hoffman. He is the owner of Desert Rock Winery, and they do so many fun things for the community. He wanted to let me know that they are opening back up today. They make their own wines. They host a lot of events there. And tomorrow, this has been a cool thing to see. They're hosting a food truck. I've seen a lot of food trucks
cool.
around town
Yeah.
because you can sort of socially distance.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so Desert Rock Winery. And as we close things out, I just want to say again, thank you guys for watching. And you can find this show posted up just a little bit later on our website, inspiredmedia360tv.com. My mission is to really support all of you. And together we can hopefully navigate the coming weeks and months as we come out of this crisis. Again, thank you very much. We're going to close out today with a shout out to a bunch of small business owners who have reached out to me with their names on the screens. Take care, everyone.